Right, hello guys, Lucian here, and we are not playing Skylines today. This is not a standard Skylines session. I actually want to do just a video talking about, thoughts I have about the DLCs for these games, because, Skylines is probably, in my opinion, due more DLC in the future. I mean, the game is still super popular, and I love playing it, and so do a lot of people. So we really want to see some future DLCs, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of speculate and just discuss about one idea that I think would be pretty good for the game. And also, I'll just take this opportunity to say a big thanks to all you guys who watch and follow this channel. Going into 2017, I am planning to do stuff more regularly on this channel in the form of videos like this, smaller videos much like my other channel, where it's kind of standard YouTube content and not just the uploading of my live streams in terms of the playthroughs. Although I do also intend to even go further and do other playthroughs of games. I know many of you want to see more indie game content from me. I'm 100% planning to do that, and I think there's going to be a period soon where we do a bit of a catch-up essentially, and have some good gameplay sessions there. But like I say, I want to make more content as well, just talking about the industry, talking about games, coming up with ideas, speculations, just discussing about other games, stuff which is not FPS, not tactical. And hopefully my plan is that we will grow this YouTube channel through 2017. So that is coming up on the way, and I would just, as always, say thanks very much guys for continuing to support and watch the channel. So let's talk about DLC and stuff for Skylines. Now, we've had a couple of DLC so far for the game. Of course, we had Snowfall, we've had the Disasters DLC, and of course, the fantastic modding continues, and they did release some of those packs where we had extra little bits and pieces, things like stadiums, things like some of the building upgrades. But one thing that I think could really use a boost is industry. I would very much like to see. Oh, I missed one of the DLC. Do you remember which one it was? After Dark. After Dark I missed, but yeah, After Dark is in there as well. But industry could use some love and attention. Right now we have agriculture, and we also have, of course, default standard industry. We have forestry, and we have mining, which I don't have on this map currently. We're going to try and push out in that direction. Of course, lastly we have oil production and mining. Oil tapping, drilling. That's the word I was after. Drilling. Oil drilling. So we have a few avenues for us in terms of industry. But it would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it, if we could really expand upon that. Now, mods are all very well and good in terms, or not even mods, but assets are all very well and good in terms of bringing in extra buildings, whether it's recycling plants, incineration plants, other little bits and pieces, whether they are just, visual upgrades. But they don't really add anything to the game. I mean, yes, of course, they add to the game in that, they can provide extra support, stability, or just other avenues. I mean, some of the fantastic infrastructure stuff, like, not that one, but some of these water treatment pumps and stuff, not only are they visually interesting, but they're also literally helpful. I love the purifiers and the clarifiers here. These are fantastic, because very much like you have them in real life, they just help the map to look, more in keeping and more realistic. Now, I don't take some of my map designs to the same level of detail as some producers in terms of refining their maps down and making them look, absolutely beautified and realistic. That's not how I play or why I play the game. Although I would imagine it might be fun to try and do that at some point. I think it'd be very enjoyable. But when it comes to industry, I feel like, especially standard industry, it fills out and it takes up space and but basically that's it, and it's providing jobs and so on. It'd be really cool to have another DLC where we expand upon the industry and we can go into it in more detail. So perhaps instead of just having a fairly simplified aspect, and also, to be clear, this would be perhaps a specific game mode that you begin, so an industry game mode or something like this, so that you are well aware that you're basically going into a game where there's going to be more detail when it comes to industry, so that it's not just going to be a standard game where, basically the simple version. It's going to be a harder version with a lot more detail, and there could be all sorts of things going on there. You think back to games like Railroad Tycoon, and a lot of the stuff you could do there in terms of, owning bonds, owning shares, looking at the markets, hiring different managers. You could have, a variety of hiring managers and stuff for your industry aspects and stuff like this. Owning companies, maybe you manage multiple companies. So again, you could be, and there could be like independent companies starting off trading off one another. That's one idea. You could have different companies operating and you're sort of subcontracting out to them, or they're competing with one another and you have to sort of try and vie for asset space and so on and so on. But let's be real. I mean, that's not entirely the way that Skylines works in its mechanics. That would be throwing some new stuff into the mix. But I was just kind of comparing there how things used to work with Railroad Tycoon, and how that was a really interesting sort of way of working at that competition between business, because that's essentially, of course, how industry and business works. They're competing companies against one another, so trying to make them work efficiently and well is part of the mechanics there of that game. But just beyond that, there'd be some more industries that we could throw in. And again, I'm sort of thinking back to kind of when you had like SimCity and some of the stuff that they brought in there with that game, and how you could, for example, you had ploppable assets which could build onto other buildings and sort of improve. Now, with Skylines, of course, the buildings kind of generally auto upgrade, but not necessarily services, of course. But industry sort of auto upgrades and just expands itself depending on how well it's doing. But it'd be really cool if you could have further specializations in your districts. So with your districts right now, you can of course designate them as sort of agriculture or drilling for oil and so on, or just generic industry. Well, it'd be really, really cool if you could have extra ones or even subdivisions of these stuff, like maybe let's you specialize in advanced technology. So then they require certain components, certain aspects, but then they sell more. It makes your city earn more. It has ramifications in terms of, the intelligence of the people they're hiring. Perhaps you require a more advanced universities to train those people, some institutes, things like this, so that there are various sub-degrees of requirements before you can actually get those, those advanced, more expensive, sort of high-earning districts going on there. And then you could have stuff, like advanced plastics and all sorts of things like that in terms of that kind of stuff, but also mining. We have ore mining already, but what I would love to see is sort of some expansion in combination with the industry there, perhaps some expansion on the rail and the transport systems, because I remember, again, I'm thinking of like Railroad Tycoon, where you could build like little branch line railways right up into the hills that would service industry. But right now we don't really have any sort of micro stations which would serve industry necessarily. They would probably just serve passengers. So if part of the industry DLC, you could have railroad connected to it with specific designated small stations that serve that. That would be really cool, because then of course you could have like those sort of industry branch lines which go to designated locations and so on, things like this. It would be really cool as well if you could expand on the industries we already have. So the agriculture stuff, maybe you can really start to build like big plain fields with like agriculture hubs where they're really working on. Maybe there's some small other assets that you could bring in alongside it, because of course people build their own assets for no reason why when you do a DLC they usually do bring in extra stuff, like some of the disaster things we've got in here, like the helicopter stuff and the disaster response unit. They bring these kind of specialized things in with that. So why couldn't you do that for sort of say agriculture? Why couldn't you do that for the forestry, the logging aspect? What if you were near a river, okay, and as you see in kind of Canada and America, when they cut down all of that timber, and that timber is then floated downriver. Well, what if you couldn't do that here as well? What if you sort of were able to just kind of use them as storage areas for wood and that kind of thing? Or maybe if you built part of the forestry industry near to rivers, maybe they would just start doing that by default automatically, or things like this. Again, when it comes to the oil processing stuff, there's other things that you could be tapping into there. There's other sort of underground assets that you could be tapping into. So perhaps, they do start to look at those other kind of things there. This sort of shale gas, fracking and all these kind of things. I mean, now again, you could say, well, you could just do that as an asset. We already have things like the biogas plant. That's 100% true, but I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if you could kind of connect it to certain other industries that are just, finding it to try and expand upon it. But what other industries could we have? Well, I think it'd be pretty awesome if we could work even on sort of maybe a military complex. something like this, where you're requiring a certain, again, citizens, and it's sort of, military bases. And again, you're going to say, looting, well, that's just assets. Yeah, it is just assets. But, what if those kind of had other ramifications in terms of the way you had to design your map, or the budgeting and all these kind of things? And again, I kind of glossed over it before, but when we were talking about budgeting, this stuff is fairly straightforward, and I don't even have most of my things. Even I barely find a reason to actually adjust some of these things. I barely ever take a loan anymore, maybe once or twice at the very, very beginning of the game, but other than that, barely ever. Taxes, once you set them up, they pretty much stay the same. This stuff is really straightforward. And it really doesn't sort of, tax you. You don't find yourself, I don't find myself anyway, usually when we're playing a game, having to go into the budgeting panel and actually look at any of these details. It's kind of interesting, but it doesn't really, you can, if you want to sort of, if you have an issue, a problem in the game, you may need to dip into this to sort of track down what is going on. But by and large, you don't really ever have to look at it. We had issues with the buses, you can tweak that. You have issues with the garbage collection, you can tweak that. Producing too much electricity, you can tweak that. But it's pretty straightforward stuff. There's not a lot of detail to it. It'd be really cool to have that as part of the industry element there, to just sort of expand on the budgeting and the way that specific industries perhaps handle their income and outgoing and the way that they're taxed, maybe, and we do have obviously the district elements. That's the only other thing I suppose we could say, is that you do have the policies in terms of taxation. So tax rising for high density commercial, tax raising on offices, and But again, let go of leisure. Leisure specialized areas stop generating tax, but get a hefty boost in their entertainment and attractiveness values. Well, that's great, but look, where's all the stuff to do with, you have industrial space planning, right? This one says allow industry to work even more effectively by overlooking a few work safety laws. Well, again, look, as part of the kind of industry DLC, you could have a lot more detailed policies which allow you to shape the way your industry performs. You want like a high risk, high profit industry, but maybe your citizens, get pissed off at that. Maybe there's a lot of deaths, potentially a lot of casualties from that, and then maybe people sort of start to leave because they're unhappy if you're too reckless with things. But again, or perhaps you can really go into detail in terms of generating certain kinds of agriculture. Okay, so maybe you go into, a much more, so you have actual like full-on meat packing plants and stuff. And again, maybe that's the thing, is like you sort of try and co-opt these things by sort of, designing certain industry aspects to complement one another. So perhaps instead of having like just generic industry and just agriculture and just oil and just mining, what happens if you start to combine those things together? So where you have your mining aspect, you can also then, within, because right now it's just straight up the districts, so it's like agriculture, industry, well, would it be really cool to actually sort of combine those things together so that you could designate like, within your agriculture area, maybe they start also producing like meat packing plants, slaughterhouses, other things going on here, rather than just, a few greenhouses, a few other little bits and pieces. And again, I suppose people can argue like yet again, okay, yeah, those are assets potentially, but I'm talking more about like the sort of logistics in the way each industry were to work. I think basically it'd be cool to just expand upon what already exists, give more details, give more options for people. And again, I think what would be really awesome is to just see that expansion. So for example, with the generic industry, it'd be really cool to see like pushed into like the much further high tech stuff. Again, this is kind of very similar to what happened in SimCity. Okay, so this stuff, instead of staying kind of like industrial factories which are constantly producing pollution, why can't you go to a point where it stops producing that kind of terrible pollution and you get much kind of cleaner, more high tech, but still generic industry, so that you could actually build proper industrial estates, where people wouldn't mind sort of still having them in the city because they don't produce tons and tons of ground pollution. People will actually sort of go there and they become kind of technology centers. So instead of having like, because our office center here is fantastic, it's epic. We feel really good about the office center here, and it's like a big sort of hub for the center of the city here in terms of getting workers in and out of it. But why couldn't we do that with industry? Why couldn't we have an industrial complex which is still, almost as advanced as some of the office stuff, you know. So basically what you would have going on there is a lot of clean tech buildings and warehouses and things like this. So, you know, the area looks really awesome, and some big stuff as well, like proper big units which perhaps will take up the space of, say, like, you know, a large park. You know, so a great big warehouse, so that you could again design that around, very much like what I was saying with the farming. You know, why, you know, you can get these kind of like these little things here, which are just assets, these large agricultural fields. But what it would be really cool to see is for you to be actual, to sort of, for example, perhaps use a road as a border. Okay, and then once you've done that, the entire area becomes fillable if it's like agriculture. Okay, so let's say we take a road, okay, and we go, okay, so like, of course you can see the areas here appearing for us to zone. But what if we were designing a field and we go, okay, well, look, that's going to be our field. Now you can see, of course, it goes along the edge of the road as it always does. But if that area was completely fillable, so like basically maybe there's like an extra button which allows you to fill the area, make it sort of asset available. So if under agriculture, whatever, you would click that, and then this whole area would become selectable as like a field or a farming area. Okay, and then once it's selected as a farming area, then it becomes like a great big field, and then perhaps like little buildings, little farm buildings start to associate with that, and then you would see like tractors and agricultural machinery going up and down, farming the land and doing actual stuff. So you can actually see the kind of agriculture taking shape. Those are the kind of things that you can't have happen just with assets, because with assets they tend to sort of sit down and vehicles come and go and come and go, and maybe you have like the odd little animation for sort of, you know, like these, like the cows and things like this, but by and large nothing, right? And again, you know, we've got these fields down here, and they're great for just kind of visual effect, but they don't really do anything. You know, and so it'd be fantastic to see, like, for example, corn, you know, having like combine harvesters and stuff going up and down combines, just like stripping the fields and things. You know, actually see proper industry happening. And again, at night time, there could be certain types of industry which are much more sort of vibrant and things happening at night time. And what about strip mining? Okay, with mining right now, you sort of, again, it's basically like industry. They put the stuff down there. But what about if you designate an area for mining and it actually starts to alter the landscape over time? Or big like open cast mining, where, you know, they just have like a great big hole in the ground. And again, you sort of, if that could work in a very similar way to the agriculture. You know, you designate an area where you know there is ore in the ground, and again, why does it just have to be ore when it comes to mining? What about, again, with the, like I talk about sort of the refinement and the extra detail that you would have going into you know, different types of industry. What if you could not have, like, for example, like granite mining or like marble and all these kind of things? So you're actually getting like stone things, you know, things out of the ground. And right now it's just designated as ore. So we just have ore. Well, why could you not have like very specific high value different types, but that are more difficult to get to, deeper mining? You know, so it actually takes a while. It's more expensive to set up. Maybe you need certain custom buildings. Maybe you need sort of some infrastructure connections, like specific infrastructure. Spit my words out. Specific infrastructure connections to actually get up to there. So perhaps we have to have like little, you know, railway, like I was saying before, to actually get up and provide that sort of that reach of assets, so that they can actually provide like industry, machinery, and workers, and all these kind of things to actually get up to that point. So yeah, you could do that kind of like deeper mining. You could have copper mines, all different sort of stuff going on there. Gold mining for the, you know, all these kind of different things. That would be really cool. So I would love to see an expansion of the kind of industry things that we have going on right now. If you guys have some ideas for industry, and again, also I'll just say one last thing: industry does not have to obviously be just about these kind of working jobs. Why can't we have more science and tech industry? So full on like research centers, which are spanning, you know, I'm thinking of kind of like proper advanced institutes. So that could actually be an area of industry in itself, like just advanced research and so on and so on. So like a big sprawling university, which takes like an entire area. Right now, university buildings that we have tend to be, you know, like, for example, where are they? Here. So like these are the metropolitan universities, and they look great. They're awesome assets, but I would love to see it go beyond that. Like I say, you know, combine that into sort of industry almost. So it ends up taking a sprawling area of land, and then there's loads of other the smaller assets. Again, I'm going to reference SimCity. You know, it reminds me like SimCity. I loved the thing with the university there, where you could expand the university. You could put dorms down, you could put specific buildings, and then those specific buildings would unlock other technologies and different types of industry available to you. Again, why not do that? That was a really cool thing. I loved that in SimCity. It would work really great. You know, you expand your university, it gives you specific access to certain types of industry. Loads of stuff to play with there, and yeah, you know, I would love for them to expand on this. Will they? I don't know, but you know, I'm just throwing out ideas, and it's fun to think about what could be. So guys, please tell me down below in the comments what kind of industry you would like to see in City Skylines. We're just kind of speculating and throwing ideas out here, but you never know, these kind of things could come to fruition. Perhaps they'll see it, perhaps they'll love it, perhaps they'll think, absolutely, let's get down on it and do that. I very much hope so. Will they? I don't know. But you know, I think industry is one thing that with Skylines, which is kind of you know, its full potential has not been reached, and I would very much like to see that happen because this game is absolutely fantastic. I love playing this game, and I would just want to see more detail that goes beyond just having some little assets in there. You know. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a little like as always. I'll see you next time for some more City Skylines.